Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we are doing something a little different where I am going to be talking about what I have learned from doing vendor events this year. This was my first year doing vendor events, and if you don't know what vendor events are, that's like craft shows and other kind of events where, you're selling stuff, you're a vendor. So this is going to be a video mostly for people that are new to vendor events, as this was only my first year. I am not at all an expert. This is just going to be stuff that I feel like I've learned through the year on my own and doing my own research. So this can help somebody who is thinking about getting into vendor events, or you've only done a couple shows and you just want to listen to someone else's opinion about things that maybe you haven't thought about. So yeah, I'm going to break this video up into different sections, so there will be timestamps for you to jump around because there's a lot of info I want to go over. I don't know how long it'll be. But there will be stuff about, why I wanted to do vendor shows, why maybe you want to consider doing them, a little background about my first shows, how I felt, following your niche, your audience, finding shows to apply for, customer and vendor interactions, applying for shows, event promotion and organization, table setup, cost and profit, and just other little things that I feel like I've learned through this year of actually doing events. So if you'd like to hear my opinion and what I have learned, stick around, and yeah, let's just get into it. So to start off, I'm just going to talk about why I've decided to do craft shows and why maybe you would consider to do craft shows or just vendor events, not just craft shows, because I am a mixture of an artist and a witchy kind of vendor, so I don't only do craft shows. I do like psychic fairs and other kind of shows, but we'll get into that later. So I decided to start doing craft shows mostly for two reasons. One, my online traction just isn't really there. I'm not a big online promoter. I am a disabled artist. I am someone with low and fluctuating energy, so posting online is kind of difficult for me. Even doing these videos is kind of difficult because video editing is not my favorite thing and it takes a lot of energy. So my online presence just isn't doing it for me. My online shop is really slow. The second reason is more personal. It's more about my mental health. So I am disabled. I do have an anxiety disorder, panic disorder. I was diagnosed with agoraphobia as a young adult, teenager, and generally getting out of my house is really difficult for me. I have a really hard time interacting with other people, going new places. Anything that involves getting out of my comfort zone is really, really hard for me. So I decided to start doing shows because, one, I really wanted to find who my audience was, because my online shop wasn't doing anything, and it's really hard to get feedback about your products when there just aren't people seeing them. And I also just really wanted to try to tackle my anxiety and get out there and go to events, because I didn't really attend events on my own, and like I said, I have a really hard time leaving my house. But I thought maybe if I get out there and kind of, put myself in a position where I have my stuff on display. It's really big exposure therapy. I'll just put it that way. It's like really, really intense exposure therapy to not only get out in public, but to also showcase stuff that you've made that's really vulnerable. And so, I don't know, I kind of thought it would be a good way for me to start to get out of my comfort zone, and it was. In short, I have gone to more events, and I actually do get kind of excited to go to events. I like meeting other people, other vendors, and it's usually a good time. So those are my main reasons for starting to do shows, and I think it's a really good idea if even if you have a good online shop, you find more people in person, and it's just I don't know, a more validating, more fulfilling kind of experience to have people shopping with you in person and you get literal live feedback. It's really different than online interactions where people can leave you feedback, but usually there's a delay in communication and tones don't really come across right. So it's just a good way to actually meet people. And so yeah, it's just a good way to get out of your comfort zone and find your audience. So let's move on to the next part. So my first shows were at the beginning of 2024, but my actual first show that I did was technically at the end of 2023. My friend has a spiritual art shop and she was having like a little Black Friday event. And I decided, like, what a better way to get into doing some kind of vendor things than to do it at someone I know's place, you know, that like is comfortable to me. If you don't have that opportunity, I'm sorry, but like I did have that opportunity, and it was a nice low-key, laid-back kind of event. It wasn't like overly busy, so I got to actually just get the experience of like setting my table up, having people buy from me, figuring out payment options, and all of that like nitty-gritty stuff in a more like calm way. But then my first like official show where I wasn't like at a friend's shop was in February 2024. I had signed up for this show. It was an Aphrodite show for Valentine's Day, run by our local vegan expo. And it was another small event. Like there wasn't, I wouldn't say it was super busy. There were definitely people there, but it was like a small, like, come craft, enjoy Valentine's Day kind of event. And it was just a really good introduction to doing events with other people and learning about the application process, learning about the setup, the loadout process, like all of that stuff. It sounds simple, but like I'm really anxious, so it was just something that had me like really uncertain. And so I was just like grateful to be able to get into an event that was like smaller, more low-key. There were like 10 vendors total, and just, you know, get my bearings. So, and I also met some really nice people there. This is where I also met another witchcraft kind of vendor, and she immediately like started telling me other events that I could apply to that she thinks that like my products would do good at. And at this time I only had like 3 products because I only started as a sticker shop, and then I got notebooks, and then I got like bracelets and, you know, whatever. But she was, you know, giving me advice, and like I was having a good time just chatting with other vendors, which isn't something that I kind of expected myself to want to do. So that was my first shows, and my next shows is where I really started to learn about like finding your niche and finding your audience. So moving into that, following your niche and your audience is kind of important with craft shows and vendor shows in total. And I didn't learn that until our next event, which was a farm craft show. We have a local farm that does like seasonal craft shows, and I'm sure, you know, wherever you are, there are probably the same kind of things. I applied for it, I got in, and we did terrible. We did absolutely horrible. I don't even think we made more than like $20. We got a lot of feedback, and what the feedback told me is that I need to follow my niche and I need to follow my audience. So like I said, at that time I didn't have a lot of different products. I mostly had stickers and notebooks, and I did have a few like witchcraft items. Like I have Reiki infused baths. I had my intention bracelets. I think that was it that I had there. I don't think I had anything else. But point of the story here is that the farm audience did not appreciate the witchcraft element of my brand. So that's where I kind of learned that, okay, maybe going to these like farmers market things isn't really good for me. If you're solely like an artist or something, these would be great for you. Like totally go to them, because there were a bunch of different crafters that were doing great. But I did notice that like the more alternative people were not doing great. And this might be different for your city. I am in a small city that does have a bit of a religious population. So I'm just saying, like, I had so many people walk up to my table, and I have like these angel number stickers. I actually have a mini version of one right here, but like I have these angel number stickers, and I have the numbers 111 through 999 and 1111, and they would see the 666 sticker and they would just freak out. Like they would just be like, oh my God, 666. And I have like Ouija planchettes, you know, Ouija board planchettes. I don't have any right next to me, but it was not good. It was just not good. So I learned like, okay, I need to go for events where I think more open-minded, alternative kind of people are gonna be at, and that's not farmers markets. So from there, I started trying to look for more events and be more selective about the events, and see the ones that cater to more of like a witchier crowd, a more alternative crowd, a younger crowd. Not only younger, because I did have a lot of like older customers, but you know, mostly younger people. And so I applied for like psychic fairs. There was a local mystic market. There was this witching hours market. Anything on the like witchy psychic kind of spectrum is where I found that I did a lot better, where my products were a lot more, accepted. And yeah, these were really good. The other thing about following your niche and audience is if you don't have any idea who your audience is or what your niche is, maybe you're an artist that does multiple things, or you're just a vendor with multiple kind of items, that's okay. I still encourage you to go to different shows because you'll start to learn who your audience is when you go to these shows. It's a lot easier to figure out who your audience is when you have a table there with your stuff and you see who is drawn to it. Is it a younger crowd? Is it a crowd, like, what are they wearing? What do they look like? I don't want to, like, say stereotypes, but, like, what do they look like? What do they look like they're into? Do you see anything else they've purchased from the show? You start to learn, like, the kind of people that are interested in your product a lot easier when you're at a show and you can actually see who comes up. Like, I definitely learned that my brand is for the girls, the gays, and the theys, and that's mostly who I attract. I have a lot of colorful, girly, LGBT-esque kind of items. I don't attract a lot of male people, so that was just something for me to learn. And I do have a lot of younger people in my audience. There are older, like, spiritual people who I also attract, but I only learned that by going to shows and seeing who was attracted to my table, who came up to talk to me, and what other kind of things they were interested in. So that is something about following your niche and audience. Try to apply to events that seem like they apply to you and what you have. And don't be afraid to try out events that maybe don't seem like they fit what you have, because you'll get good feedback if you have the funds to do that. Granted, all events are kind of a gamble, and we'll get more into that in the cost area. But yeah, so you'll find out more as you go, basically. But it is better if you can find events that are related to the kind of product that you sell. So, all right. Moving on now, we're going to talk about shows to apply to. How do you find them? All right. Oh, that page is blank. So how do you even find these shows in the first place? Honestly, I'm still kind of figuring it out. It seems really difficult. But the best place to start is Google and Facebook. On Facebook, you can usually just type in some keywords and look around your location. If you're just an artist, you can just type in craft show, arts and craft show, anything like that. There's probably like a ton of those. If you're more niche, it's going to be a little harder because you have to try to find the certain keywords that you want to look into. Like for me, it's like witchy, witchcraft, mystic, psychic fairs, spooky, oddity, like various words that relate to kind of your niche. So the more narrow your niche is, the more you're going to want to have to try to dig into those keywords. And yeah, you'll look on Facebook and you'll look on Google. Google, you can just type in, blank shows near me, whatever kind of keyword you're looking for near you. And see what comes up and just look around. It'll be a little hard at first, but once you start meeting other vendors and you follow them on Facebook, you can usually kind of piggyback off of them and see what events they're posting that they're going to. That's a good way to find events that I find is pretty reliable, especially when there are established vendors who know events that they have gone to in the past. Then you're more likely to find an event that isn't like totally new, and not that new events are bad, but something that's established is more likely to get a good crowd. So that is the best way to find events so far. And once you start finding them on Facebook, always hit interested. Even if you don't plan to apply, the more you hit interested on these events, the more that they'll show up in your algorithm. And it'll also help the events boost themselves. Facebook has an algorithm, and the more people interact with it, the more that it will show up for other people. So a note here is to be aware of event scams. There are so many different scammers these days, and they're not usually too hard to spot. They're usually really, they say the same thing, like, oh yeah, we have open spots, email me here. And that sounds like it should be legit, but one, you can look at their Facebook profile, see if it's new, see if they have anything else posted other than that. And generally, the best idea is to find the official Facebook event or other event page, wherever the event is, if they have their own website. Find that and find the contact info or application that is listed with that event page, because if you just message someone on Facebook, they're probably going to send you like a generic form that doesn't even have any like identifying info on it, because they want to be able to use it, you know, to scam people on multiple events. They'll use the flyer and pretend that they're a host, but the event like page thing won't have any extra info. So always, always, always do your due diligence and make sure you're not being scammed. There are a few event people who will have you pay them through like PayPal or Cash App, but that's very, very rare. Usually they have their own like Square website or something where they'll send you an invoice. At least that's what I found. So just try to find the official event page or website and find the contact info there before you pay anyone, because there are just so many scammers. And don't be discouraged if you're not accepted into every show you apply for. Keep searching. You'll find some that are a better fit for you. There's a lot of people trying to apply for shows. Not everyone's going to get into them. So just keep going. Like, that's my best advice for that. All right. Moving on into customer interactions. So, like I said at the start of this video, part of why I wanted to do craft shows was to kind of tackle my own anxiety. And luckily, I have my husband with me at all of these shows, so he can kind of take on some of the interaction. I'm not only there by myself, but I did, you know, work on interacting with customers a lot. I always try to give a simple greeting, you know, just a hello, like, how you doing, kind of thing. And what I really learned was that I kind of enjoy interacting with the customers. It is still anxiety inducing, but you like meet a lot of nice people that even if they don't shop with you, they talk to you, and it's just a fun interaction. Like, it's a nice socialization that like doesn't have to really go anywhere with any pressure. And so if you're like also really shy, I would just say, you know, just greet people. You don't have to be overly like peppy or anything. I feel like a lot of customers kind of get annoyed when you're too talkative with them because they feel pressured to shop. But if you just give like a simple like, hello, how are you doing today? If you need any help, let me know. You know, that just goes a long way. That opens the door for them to talk to you. So I luckily didn't have a lot of like mean customers, because I know that's a possibility. I did have customers that were rude, but they weren't rude to me. They were just like talking to their friends while looking at my table. And that can be like really discouraging. So you just gotta try to like brush it off. Like, okay, like for one, like how fucking rude. You can't wait till you walk away from the table to say something mean. But yeah, just some snide remarks, and people, or you get people that are like, oh, I could make that. And it's like, well, good for you. Go make it. It can be annoying, but you get a lot more nice people, I think, at least in my experience. There are mostly people that are like, oh, this is so cute. Oh, I love this. And like, even if they don't buy it, like, it's nice. So you might also get people taking pictures. And I don't personally know how I feel about this. Like, on one hand, it kind of bothers me because I feel like they might be like copying my stuff. On the other hand, I have heard people be like, oh, I'm going to send this to my friend. They're going to really like this, and like maybe they'll buy something. I don't think that's really happened, but it's a possibility. So I don't do anything about people taking pictures, but maybe, you know, it's just something to be aware of. If you're not like, if you don't like it, you could have a sign, I guess, it's like, please don't take pictures of my table or something. I don't know how that would really work though, because people don't really tend to read your signs. And I guess that's something to mention with customer interactions, is people might ask you questions that are literally on signs on your table. Just answer them, or just be like, oh yeah, it's right there. And like, they'll be like, oh, I didn't even see it. And it's like, did you even look? Alright, but yeah, customer interactions aren't too bad. Just, you build up the skill as you go. And it's usually just pretty simple. You know, people tell you they either like your item or they just kind of walk by. Now, vendor interactions are another thing. Like I said earlier, I really do like interacting with vendors. I think it's a good way to network and just socialize. And it's just nice talking to other small business owners. And a lot of them, most of them, are pretty eager to help you out in finding other events for you to apply for. There aren't many that are, you know, very like standoffish, at least not that I have met. Of course, though, there are some that are on that flip side that are, I haven't met like an overly mean or like disruptive vendor, but I have a few like instances where the vendor neighbors were just like totally careless and encroaching in our space, or letting their kids just run around crazy and touch everyone's stuff. And I'm not like a super confrontational person. I can be, but I haven't been at events, so I usually just kind of ignore it. But it's just something to be aware of, that yeah, sometimes you're gonna get a mixture of vendors. But it's nice when you start to get to know them, or you just get comfortable seeing them, because then like they're like work friends and they're more of a friendly face you get to see when you go to different shows. It like helps, you know, feel comfortable, because you're like, oh, I know this person, like at least kind of, you know. But like again, they are work friends. So keep that in mind when you are talking to other vendors, that they are not your friends. They are like work associates. They know people that you don't know. They might have been doing this longer than you have been doing this. So do not talk shit with these vendors. That's just something to know. Like, even if they start talking shit, like, don't do it, because you don't know who they know. You don't know who's listening. There are a lot of vendors who know the coordinators or are friends with the coordinators, and you just don't want that to come back and bite you in the ass. So like, just don't talk shit with other vendors. You know, maybe you build a friendship over time, but like right away, I wouldn't say trust them with that information. And also just don't trust them with any kind of thing that you're doing that maybe you shouldn't be doing. Like just don't mention that to vendors or like anyone at the show because you don't know who knows who. And event coordinators can hold grudges and not let you into future events if they don't like you. I haven't had this happen because I don't talk shit with other vendors. But I have seen it happen with other people, and seen like other people talking shit about people, and I'm just like, that's just really weird to me. Like, we're all kind of doing our own thing here. There was one event in particular that we were vending at that I did have like a bad experience with another vendor. It wasn't like an argument or anything, but they broke the vendor rules. Like, you were supposed to bring one table. We were on a narrow bar patio, and you were supposed to bring one table, no tents. Well, they brought a tent, and they brought 3 tables, and they set up, like, in the middle to the end section of the patio, and then me and 2 other vendors were on the other side of the end, and there was only one way to walk there, and her tent was right in the middle, so she was kind of blocking the walkway to us. And that wasn't so bad at first, because at least you could see that we were there, so some people would come to us. But as the day went on and the sun came up, she was selling candles. She put up a tent wall, a totally solid tent wall, and effectively blocked me and the other vendor that were at the under end of the patio. And then, so no one came down there. No one knew we were there. The walkway was like super narrow after that, and just no one showed up. So me and the other vendor ended up packing up early and leaving. Now, what I would say about this is the vendor was careless and totally knew that she was blocking us. But whose fault it really is the event coordinators, because there were rules about what you were allowed to bring for your setup, and they were not enforced for this vendor. No one else had a tent. No one else had multiple tables. This person was given leeway to do it because the event coordinator felt too awkward to say anything. And I get that as an awkward person. But it also looks really bad to other vendors when you're letting other people break rules that are affecting the other vendors. So that's just something to keep in mind, is that like situations like that do happen and they suck, and it's up to you to either talk to the coordinator or talk to the other vendor. I just decided to leave because the turnout wasn't really good. There was no point in arguing with anybody. Like, even if she put her tent wall down, there weren't a lot of people showing up. So I just went home. But yeah, that is that for vendor interactions. We are going to move on to the events themselves, the event promotion and the event coordination organization. So this is going to be a little bit of a bigger section just because there's kind of a lot to consider when looking at events to apply for. I'm going to start talking about event promotion, and then we'll get into event organization in the next section. So something to consider with events is they are not all equal in terms of promotion. You will begin to spot differences in these organizations as you do the events, and some of them do a ton of advertising. They do flyers, they do ads, they do, various in-person advertisements, various online advertisements. But it'll be kind of hard to spot which ones are doing better, like promotion in the beginning. You're just going to have to kind of learn it over time. You might be able to notice it at first. If you see an event posted on Facebook and like another event site like Eventbrite, or even, is it Eventy, whatever, another event site, that's a good sign. They're promoting in different areas. And are they using Facebook sponsored ads, or are they just promoting on the Facebook, like just posting things? Look at their page interactions, look at the Facebook event page and see how many people are interested in the event. That will give you a good idea of how the promotion is going. Unfortunately, some of these people do kind of just rely on Facebook and they call it a day, and that really sucks. And it's just really hard to get really good traction if you're only posting on Facebook and you're not posting anywhere else. You're not advertising anywhere else. So keep that in mind when looking at events. And like I said, it'll be a little hard until you're really like behind the scenes and seeing the events yourself. But just kind of keep it in mind. Try to look at these different sites. And many of these coordinators, like I said, only use Facebook or Facebook ads. This misses a lot of people because there are a lot of people that aren't on Facebook or just don't see events on Facebook. I have been on Facebook for a few years and I have not seen a single one of these events pop up. Particularly, I wasn't really looking that hard for them. And a lot of people probably aren't looking that hard. So there needs to be multiple forms of promotion, in my opinion. Not just like a Facebook flyer, which is just a whole thing of itself. Is that I think a lot of these coordinators have great intentions. Like, I'm not trying to talk shit on them because I do think they have great intentions to run a good event. But I don't think that they are marketing people. Like, I think that they think if they put it out there, it'll get out there. And I don't know. Some of them are a little, like, they don't put a lot of effort into their flyers, or they put a lot of effort, but it's just not the kind of flyer that attracts people. Like, I've seen event flyers that, like, they're pretty, but at a first glance, you don't know what the event is. And that's a problem. If you see an event flyer and you can't tell what's going on at the event, you're, like, most people are just kind of gonna forget about it. Versus, like, if you have an event flyer with big, bold letters of what's going on here, you're more likely to get people to pay attention. Or even pictures of the event, like past events, where I've seen some Facebook people, Facebook events have like pictures of the vendor room. So you get a good look at like what's going on here, what kind of vendors are at this event. So unfortunately, this does come down to the event coordinator having multiple forms of advertising, and you can't really control that much as a vendor. What you can do as a vendor is do your best to advertise the events that you're attending. This means posting the flyer on your page, posting it on your website if you have a website, putting it on your link tree or beacons, whichever one you use, if you use one of those kind of things. I like to put them, I have a specific page on my website for all my upcoming events. I put the picture of the flyer, I put the date, I put the time, I put any little bio info they have for it, like this is an event with these kind of vendors. I also try to put accessibility stuff on there because, you know, accessibility is important to people. They need to know if it's wheelchair accessible and whatnot. And I also just put a direct link to the Facebook page. So if anyone finds it on my upcoming events page, they can go straight to the Facebook event page and like actually browse it. You can do that, or you can have it, like I said, you can have the flyer on your landing page, like a link tree or something. Share the event with your Facebook friends. Invite anyone you think might be interested. Remember that Facebook runs on an algorithm. The more people that interact with the event and the more people that share it, the more likely it is to get pushed to more people. So share it on your page, share it on your story, share it, you know, invite people. And it would also be helpful if you have flyers with you at other events you attend. Some events won't allow you to do this, so just make sure you check the roles. I didn't really do it this year because I don't know, this was my first year of vending and I didn't think about it until kind of later in the year. But I plan to do this in 2025. That event upcoming page that I have, I'm going to print that out and I'm going to give it to people at events, or I'm going to put it on my table like, this is where you can find us next. That way people that are already at your table can see where you will be again, and that'll help them kind of spread the word to other people like, oh, there's another event coming up in a month or so we can go to it. So that's just something to keep in mind about event promotions when you're applying for events or when you're already doing events in general. Now we're going to talk about event organization. So on to the organization of the event itself. Something that I have really learned is that they can be very organized or they can be very disorganized. And unfortunately, this is another one of those things you kind of learn as you go. Some of them you can kind of spot from the beginning, but you're going to learn it as you go, and you just decide if you're okay with this organization and working with this person again, these hosts again, based on their organization. But here are some things I learned about the differences in organizations. So it comes down to a couple things. One being how accessible the vendor information is. Is the vendor information included in your application? Is there, telling you what size table you're allowed, what size booth measurements? Do they provide you a table? Do you have to bring your own? Is the setup time, loadout time, all of the general information, is that on the event, application? Because it is much more helpful when you can see on the event application before you even apply, some of this information, because there might be stuff there that you can't do. If they don't offer a table, maybe you can't go. If they do offer a table, just little things like that. Do they list their information on their application? The bigger the event, the more I would expect there to be a more informative list. If it's a really small event, like at a coffee shop or just a small kind of thing, it could be a little more lax. I would still expect there to be information on your booth setup, how many tables and space you're allowed to have, and when the event obviously is and when you can set up. But the more large the event is, I would expect a more detailed list. Where you're going to park, general load in, load out times, because usually you get different load in, load out times closer to the event. But yeah, so I would expect some information up front. Why would you pay someone money to vend at their show and they can't even tell you how much space you're going to have up front? Just something to keep in mind when you're applying for events. Then there is the week of kind of organization, the week of the event. Depending on the size of the event, there might be a lot of information in these emails. Information about, obviously, load in, load out time, maybe a vendor map of assigned spots, maybe any kind of rules and restrictions that need to be reiterated. Sometimes there are no outside food rules, and that vegan event that I did, obviously you cannot bring anything non-vegan, not even food. And just other little rules that may pop up there. Always check these emails, always read them through to make sure that you're not going to miss something and get kicked out of the event. I haven't had that happen. There was one event that required insurance, craft insurance, and personally I have not bought any craft insurance. I plan to in 2025, but since it was my first year and I didn't have a lot of money, I did not do it. And this event was $20, I think, and the insurance was gonna be $40, so I just decided not to go to the event. I didn't feel like buying the insurance, and because the event was far away, and so I kind of didn't go. I didn't get a refund because obviously that was my fault. But they didn't say that I needed insurance when I applied for it, and that makes me kind of mad because that's kind of information that I would want to have up front. But anyway, something to consider. And back to the vendor organization the week of. You may or may not get a vendor map with assigned spots. So there are pros and cons to having assigned spots and not having assigned spots. Bigger events that don't have assigned spots are kind of chaotic because everyone wants the best spot. Everyone's going to try to arrive at the same time so they can get the best table. And that's not necessarily too bad, but it can be just more hectic. So if you're a really anxious kind of person, just keep that in mind, that there will be people all over the place trying to get the best table. And we'll talk about the best table in a little bit. But I personally kind of prefer assigned spots. This tells me that the event coordinator took the time to go through the list of vendors and space out any similar ones so that we all have a better chance of getting some customers. It really sucks when you're a vendor like doing something and then you're right next to another vendor who's doing the same exact thing, because then you're kind of stuck competing with each other when people walk by, unless your products are totally kind of different. But like I've seen like crochet people, for example. There are a good bit of crochet people, and at these like unassigned spots, sometimes they end up really close together, and then like one crochet person gets the most attention, and that really sucks because like price discrepancies, you know, one might price higher and people obviously want to pay less money. And like your prices are fine. I'm not talking about anyone's prices. You set your own prices, you determine what you need to charge. But yeah, so that's just something to keep in mind about organization. You're going to have a mixture of places that assign and don't assign, and it's kind of just something you're going to figure out whether you prefer or not. I don't think like I'll not go to an event just because they don't assign spots, but I will be a little more anxious because then I feel like I got to get there earlier and make sure I'm not like in a back corner where nobody's going to see me. So just to talk quickly about best spot. Best spot is very subjective. I recommend that you go to a couple events yourself and see where you think people cluster. It also just depends on the venue because all venues are a little bit different. But generally speaking, being in the very front and being in the very back don't seem to be the best spots generally, because sometimes they're fine. Being somewhere in the middle is a pretty decent area, because usually people will come in and they want to do like a lap. They want to like look at most things before they start to buy stuff. So they'll look at the first few tables and be like, okay, I'll come back around. And like they start to go. And then somewhere in that middle area, they start being like, okay, I've looked at enough people. I'm going to start buying stuff. So it's just something to think about. It's not a guarantee, because sometimes people do stop and they're like, oh, I really love this table. I'm buying something right now. You know, it's just a gamble, but generally speaking, somewhere in the middle area. And if you're at a kind of event that has like vendors on the wall and then vendors in the middle, I think the wall is a little bit better than the middle usually, because like people have a hard time wanting to go into aisles. Like, I don't know. It's kind of weird, like psychology wise. So being like on the ends of those middles or being on the wall seem to be a bit better, because then people can see you as they're walking down and they don't have to commit to going all the way through. So that's just something to consider about best spots. Another thing you're going to learn about events is that some vendors or some hosts don't always properly measure out spaces. And this is a host problem. Some hosts will kind of just eyeball it and tell you like, oh, that looks like the amount of space that you're supposed to have. And others will actually take the time and mark it out with like tape or something. And so this is just something that, you know, you're going to have to navigate. It can be kind of annoying. I really like when there are tables kind of already there with numbers on them. That's just what I prefer. It's less chaotic. You get to arrive when you want to arrive and know that your table is just where it's going to be. But for bigger events with like 10 by 10 spaces, you're going to have to like go into it and, you know, kind of find where you want to be. So, but yeah, I think the hosts that are more involved with the organization just seem to care more about having a good event for the vendors rather than a host who is just kind of there hosting it. You know, the ones that take the time to spread vendors out. Like, they actually are showing care and effort for the other vendors. So, personally, that's just how I feel. Now, again, this all varies on the size of the event. Small pop-ups really don't need that much assignment. Like, there's not many spaces to assign. So, but the host should still be making sure that people are being courteous and they are following the rules, you know, hence the tent lady at the earlier part of my video, you know, with her 3 tables in her tent where we were supposed to have 1 table. That should not be happening. Event coordinators should be the ones that come over and set the rules. You should not have to do it yourself. You can go to the event coordinator and ask them to do it. But again, I really think this is just something that event coordinators should be doing as an event coordinator. Now that we've talked all about the event promotion and the coordination, let's get into table setup. So this is just something that is going to keep changing as you keep vending. I still don't have a solid table setup. I like my table setup right now, and I think it's grown really well, but it's going to be one of those things that you're just going to work on as you go. So, first things first is you do not need a perfect table setup to get started. Do not force yourself to go buy a bunch of setup display items to just try to find stuff to work with that you have, or go to thrift stores and see what you can repurpose there. There's usually a bunch of things at thrift stores that can double as some kind of display item, whether it's like a tabletop kind of thing. Just get creative and think about what you can do. It always depends on your product, but for me, I did invest a little too much money for some display items that now I don't even use. Luckily, not too many. And I have found some other purposes for them around my house. But it can be hard if you don't have a lot of money to start with, and you're throwing all this money on display items that you end up not even using down the line. So I recommend going to a few shows as a customer and making note of what catches your eye. Because a big thing about table setups is this is what people see. This is basically like your billboard, your signage when you're in the event. What is going to catch people's eye? So go to some events yourself and take some notes. Actually, like, look around and consider, what do you notice as a shopper that makes shopping easier for you and more appealing? What do you notice that makes it harder or less appealing? Obviously, this is just going to be your opinion, but it's a good place to start. For example, if you're shopping and you spot an item you like, but it doesn't have a price tag on it or near it, are you going to ask the vendor how much it costs, or are you going to put it back down? Personally, I'm going to put it back down unless it's something I really, really want, because I'm going to feel guilty if I ask for the price and it's something I don't want to pay right now. And a lot of people feel that way. A lot of people feel uncomfortable asking for prices. So that is just a main thing to have, is clear price tags on or around the item so that people do not have to ask you. And another main thing that is agreed upon in vendor groups is that, like I said, your table is somehow eye-catching. Again, you don't have to have this right at the start, but it's something to build up to. Good signage with your brand name or your offers so that people walking by can get a good idea of what you have at a glance. So again, while you're shopping and taking notes on other vendor setups, what do you notice catches your eye? What do you notice draws you into a booth? Is it where there are a lot of people clustered? Because that is unfortunately like a good way to get people, is when other people are looking at your table. But also, when you're walking, do you go up to every single table, or do you try to glance at it from afar? So I think a lot of people try to glance at it from afar because they don't want to seem like they're committed to buying something. So think about how you can make bigger signs that kind of display what you have. How can you show off like what you offer from a bit of a distance so that people walking by can be like, oh, I see this over here, I'm gonna go this way. And colors can be a good way to get attention too. This all depends on what you sell. Personally, my brand is very, very colorful. I'll be posting videos and pictures of my table as I go through here, but my brand is very colorful. And I noticed this tends to attract a lot of attention. People see a lot of colors and they're like, ooh, fascinating. I want to go look. But this can also deter some people who prefer like a cleaner look. So depending on what you're selling, it just depends. But generally speaking, something eye-catching so that people can glance and be like, ooh, interesting. It's a lot of psychology stuff where you just kind of want to draw people in. And now I don't want to put this in a manipulative way because I don't like to try to manipulate customers to come to my table. I genuinely want people that are actually interested in my stuff to come to my table. But something to understand about customers in general is they're not trying very hard to find things. Like, especially at these kind of shows, a lot of people are just browsing. So you want to make it as easy as possible for a customer to see what you have, how much it costs, what kind of bundle deals you got, you know, anything like that. People are a little lazy when it comes to looking into things. So the easier it is for them to find, the more likely they'll find the information that they need to make their decision to buy something. So this goes into another thing that is kind of important, which is height. A lot of people don't like to look down whenever they're shopping. Again, if you're newer, you don't have to worry about this as much because you'll find things to build height on your table as you go. But generally, you want to try to build your table upward so that people can generally see your item at their eye level or like slightly below. But when they're looking all the way down, well, for one, they can't see it from afar. For two, a lot of people don't like to do that. So maybe you notice this on your own browsing, but height tends to attract shoppers and just matter to them in general. They have to look down, it'll be less noticed, and the more height you add to your table, the more that people can see it from afar. So I'm a taller person. I am like 5'9". That's kind of tall for females. So generally I try to like crouch down a little bit when I'm setting my table up to figure out like, okay, can a shorter person still reach this? So just something to consider if you are taller. But yeah, height helps people see your table from afar and notice what you're selling and generally be attracted to your table. And again, these are things you can add to your table as you go, but keep it in mind when you are buying new display pieces. Next is to try different setups. I have learned that no setup is the perfect setup so far. There are different setups for different areas that work better. For example, when I'm in like a more witchy event, maybe I want my witchcraft items to be a little more noticeable. But when I'm at a more artistic kind of event, I want my art to be more noticeable than like my witchy stuff. And I may not even bring my witchy stuff. That's another thing to consider, is that you don't always have to bring every product to every show. But try different setups. Try arranging things in different orders, putting different things higher than others. If you start to notice what your best sellers are, you can make sure those are the most visible. For me, I know that my stickers usually are the most eye-catching, and they are the thing that like people get drawn to the most and purchase the most. So I try to make them pretty visible. I put them kind of high up so that you can start to see them from afar. Unlike my notebooks, which are pretty hit or miss. You know, people aren't always looking to buy a notebook. So I try to put them somewhere noticeable, but not like the main center of attention, unless I have a lot of table space and I can put them up, you know, so that they're noticeable. So just play around with arrangements, you know, try them on different parts of the table. This also just depends on where your table is located in like an event, where people are most likely to stand. I think people don't like to be clustered in the middle sometimes, so sometimes having things on the ends is like the best place for them versus in the middle where they have to go through people to get to. So try different setups. And one more note about table setup is simply to consider your checkout area. Do you have a cash box? You probably should. Or do you have like a fanny pack with cash in it? Either way, you need somewhere for your cash. Do you have a QR code for people to scan and pay you via Venmo, PayPal, Cash App? Do you have a card reader? Where are these things located? Do you have bags for your customers? These are things that you definitely don't want to forget. Having a bag for your customer to walk away with their items is kind of important. You know, it feels really awkward to buy something and just walk away with it. Don't ever let your cash box or your bag out of your sight either. These, you know, you never know what kind of people are around, and some people just aren't very honest. And, you know, luckily I haven't dealt with that, but I also don't let my cash box out of my sight. All in all, this is kind of an experimental part of the process. You're going to be working on it. I'm still working on it. There's not really like an end, like, well, maybe eventually. But you're probably going to keep playing around with it for a while. So don't be discouraged if you have a table set up and you don't really like it. You can keep playing with it. But yeah, consider where your checkout process is going to be too. Because you got to leave room somewhere for people to come check out with you. Whether it's just at the end of your table where they come around or like a gap in the middle. Have your checkout process somewhere accessible. Now, speaking of money, we're going to move on to the costs, taxes, profits, money talk. Now, disclaimer, I am not a financial expert. I'm not going to go into this too deeply because I am not a financial expert, and rules vary depending on your state, your city, laws are different. But I'll go over the basics. So, on to the cost of doing markets. First thing to consider is booth fees. These can range from being very cheap to being very expensive. The cheapest event that I have done was $20, and that was only one event that was $20. All of the other events are generally $35 and up, although usually they start at about $50. That's just the booth fee. That just secures your spot. That is nothing else. That is not your mileage to get there. That is not the food you're going to eat that day. That is the booth fee. So that is the first thing to consider. What can you afford to do? And there are many factors that go into a show being good. So booth fees are generally a gamble, unfortunately. The more expensive the booth fee does not mean that it is going to be a great show. It may mean this is a more established show because they've been doing it for a while, so they think they can charge more. But it does not mean that it is guaranteed like a better show. And it is not guaranteed to be a good show for your product either. So consider the fact that these are gambles. These are things that may turn out really good or may not. I've had $100 booth fees where I didn't even make half of that. And I have also had $30 booth fees that I made more than 5 times that. So there is just trial and error on top of seasons, timing, weather, conflicting events, and all kinds of things that can affect how a show goes. So that is something to consider of the cost of doing markets. Now, I do believe you can write booth fees off at the end of the tax year. I have not done that yet because we're not there yet, but I guess that's something to just think about. Keep track of your booth fees. The second cost is taxes. This depends on your state laws because I know some states don't have sales tax. Mine does. We also have a city tax. So I do charge sales tax on all my card purchases. For cash purchases, I simply take it out of the cash afterward because I don't want to have to deal with change whenever I'm doing cash purchases. Many vendors will do this too. Now, if you decide not to charge sales tax on your cash, do not tell anyone that. It's against the law. It's illegal, unless you're in a state where there's no sales tax. But just be smart. Don't talk about it. Do what you gotta do. It's not my business. I'm not giving any financial advice here. I'm just saying. So we're not going to go any further into that. But if you want more tax information, I recommend you talk to a tax expert for more insight because there is also small business tax to consider and various other taxes that may apply to your city and state. Keep that in mind when you're setting your prices. So, as for profit margins, I'm also the wrong person to talk to for this because I kind of started doing this for fun and just to kind of get out there. And it's still like a side hustle for me. I do plan to get a little more serious about my costs and profits in 2025. And maybe I'll have like another video for that down the line. All right, the most organized I am is I do these like sheets where I can write down the cash I start with for the day and the cash I have at the end, and then the amount of car payments I get and the booth fee down here. So this is how organized I am. But in the future, it would probably be good to have a good list of all the events you've done, all the booth fees, my heater started, all of the costs of that day, food, all the things you can write off. I'm, again, not the best person to ask because I'm still getting into this. But that is what I've learned, is that maybe you should have a good list of these things. So, all right, so that kind of summarizes most of what I learned this year doing vendor events. Sorry, my heater just started and I am kind of like right near the furnace. Anyway, that is what I've learned, and I hope that this is informative to whoever finds it, and that I hope you have a really good journey of doing vendor events. Some closing thoughts are that I am still very glad that I started doing events and that I will continue to do them into 2025, and I hope to do more. This year I mostly did 1 to 2 events a month, except for October. I did a lot more events. Next year, I think I'm going to plan to do at least 2 events a month, and maybe try to branch out to craft shows again, and just generally bring my craft items, not my witchy stuff, since I said at the earlier of the video, my witchy stuff does not do good at general craft shows because there is a lot of religious people around here that are not interested in that. I'm also considering looking for more events that are a little further from my city, so that is something to consider, is that you don't have to do events that are only in your city. You can start to branch out and look for surrounding cities. Again, this is something to consider taxes about, because I know if you, depending on where you live, if you do sales outside of your state or something, you might need to pay taxes for that. Please find a tax expert. It's not me. But yeah. My 2025 goals are to get more organized, take my business a little more serious, get a little more creative with creative blurbs. Mercury retrograde's only just ending. Anyway, yeah, getting more organized, especially when it comes to money, is a big one, and finding new customers, making new products. I got some new craft things I'm working on. You know, I have my stickers, my notebooks, and stationery stuff, but I'm working on making rugs, and I have a laser engraver that I just got, so I'm hoping to branch out a good bit, which is why I think I'm going to look back into doing craft shows and bringing more of my craft items. Overall, it's been a good year. It's been a trial and error thing, and I hope that my trial and error helps you figure out, you know, how to navigate vendor shows. Don't be discouraged by one bad show. I've had a couple bad shows. I've had some really good shows. So just keep trying. Keep updating your table. Keep, you know, seeing what people are attracted to. And just keep going. Anyway, this video has been really long, like I expected it to be. And if you watched all of this, thank you very much. I appreciate you. Please like, comment, subscribe, share this. I don't know, something to help me in the algorithm. Yeah, or check out my website for all my art witchy offerings. Anyway, I will see you guys next time. I hope to do more art related videos on this page, as well as my tarot readings. So thank you. I will see you then.